That was me opening a beer because I needed something after watching the entire final season of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, a kids show which involves murder and the death of a galactic version of the American Empire. So, hello,
Yes.
I am your host, Diego Crespo. We're here to talk about Star Wars again today. With me today is my co host, Gina Versa.
Hello, how are you doing?
Oh
Happy
boy.
4th to you.
Oh yeah, may the fourth be with you.
Good time. Time
I'm
of the Sith Lord.
recovering from emotional devastation, and we all knew it was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, I don't remember if I cut this out of the retrospective I did with our pal Matt Garingo, which all the retrospectives are going to be up on SoundCloud and iTunes and YouTube, of course. They're already there, so check those out. I don't remember if I talked about this, but I think I cut it out where I mentioned that I'm glad the Clone Wars at that time period, time recording, like in 2017, did not get the ending that was planned because it would have been too much for a kid's show to handle.
Mm.
And I was obviously wrong because it ended up happening. And it was, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. Also,
Yeah.
here to talk about it with us is our good friend Andrew Salazar from Discussing Film. How are you?
I am very good today. I'm ready to duke it out with Gene specifically.
Yeah, you were hyping that up before the recording, and we'll get to that. But do you want to talk a little bit about Discussing Film? We've had you on before to talk about Endgame, a
Yes.
movie that was definitely not divisive between our parties. But
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead and hype yourself up, and then we'll get into some Star Wars discussions and where we're coming from in regard. Oh, whoa, excuse me. In regards to the Clone Wars, um, before this final season.
Well, I'm actually the managing editor over at Discussing Film. We do a lot of we try our goal is to spew out the most original yet engaging content that we can for people because the competition is very high. It's a
Mhm.
very saturated field entertainment journalism, but we try to make something that you haven't necessarily seen before. We try to talk about things that probably the other people aren't talking about. But in relation to Star Wars, it's actually been a very successful year so far because we got to sat down with Ashley Eckstein, Sam Witwer, and Roger Gayet, who is the visual effects supervisor for The Rise of Skywalker. He was also the same on The Force Awakens. He was also the second unit director in The Force Awakens, and he's worked on literally every single J.J. Abrams movie except Super 8 and and he didn't work on Lost. But so
Yeah.
we've been working our way up slowly, and I guess you could say that Star Wars is something that we are very we have an acquired taste, and we know we have very divisive opinions, but we also engage in healthy conversations. We don't like to shy people away for having different opinion because what's the point of that? That's no fun.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
approach. I mean, that's what we kind of try to do here. Just we
Hmm.
like to have these open discussions. We shoot the shit with each other because I like to think that if you come onto the show, we're friends and we can be friendly with each other. And sometimes that means getting into heated arguments and then going, "Hey, you want to get a beer after?" And then argue some more. But
Yeah.
like it's fun. It's like it's I don't know. It's just entertaining to talk
Yeah.
about different points of view,
Hmm.
much like Obi-Wan Kenobi says in his
Right.
far off future.
Too much negativity too in the Star Wars community.
Yeah, yeah. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
there
yeah.
is negativity, but I mean, I see a lot of real positivity. Even if people are positively dunking on a certain release, which is not the point of this conversation, so I won't dwell
Yeah.
on that. But Clone Wars, where are we all coming from with Clone Wars? Andrew, why don't you go ahead and give us your quick backstory with the Clone Wars?
Yeah, I actually remember watching the very first episode live the
Hmm.
day it aired on Cartoon Network.
Hmm.
Now,
Wow.
after that, I was very young. I did not keep up whatsoever because I couldn't because of school, whatever I was going on. But I binge watched the entire show a couple years ago before The Force Awakens, and I watched it in chronological order. I did not watch it in order of release. And after watching it in that order, I was like, how did people watch this not in order? Because there are so many stories and
Hmm.
arcs that literally work better if you just watch them one after the other.
Yeah.
I don't know. George Lucas and Filoni were on some shit back then. So, like,
They're on some
yeah.
galaxy brain shit with that.
No, literally, because in the first episode chronologically is like in the middle of season 1, and then you have to jump to season 2, and then you have to jump
Mm-hmm.
back to season 1, and then you have to jump to season 3 or something. I
Mhm.
don't
Yeah.
understand how that they pulled that off for a kid show on Cartoon Network in the time that they did. So crazy enough too, I saw the entire show, and believe it or not, I was actually in the room at San Diego Comic Con in 2018, I believe, when they announced the revival. I was in that room.
Wow.
I went by myself because none of my friends watched the show, and I was like, "Screw you guys! I'm gonna go to this
Words.
panel
Yeah.
because I don't know. I want to see Filoni. I want to see Ashley. I want to see all these people talk about the show. I mean, I was not expecting a revival to be announced. Don't get me wrong, but I remember I was sitting towards the middle, and there was a couple next to me, and they were super decked out in Jedi Jedi Temple guard cosplay.
Mm-hmm.
The dudes with the double bladed yellow lightsabers that wear those masks, they were super decked out, and the room was full. And then the panel itself was fine. It was really engaging, interesting. Dave Filoni gave some fun facts, but when they like busted out the trailer at the very end, everyone was crying. Like everyone in the room, the people next to me were swelling with tears, and I was so overwhelmed because I was also by myself. I didn't have anyone to like scream with, but I couldn't really believe that I was in that room when they said, "Yeah, guys, like you guys brought." Like Dave Filoni literally said, "You guys, the fans, literally brought this back." And I guess being at the center of that kind of energy, it's always kind of stuck with me. So going into the new season, I've been very emotional. uh, I've also, like, that doesn't mean that I'm kind of like blind to criticisms, but I've had a good time to say the least.
Mhm. Gene, what about you? Because I know you might be a little different than Andrew and I.
Yeah. Well, I started watching the show on Cartoon Network. I think
Because you
they
just fucking hate Star Wars, huh? Just say it.
no no I don't hate Star Wars. I'm not some alt right YouTuber. And, but yeah, I started watching on Cartoon Network. Wasn't it called the CN at the time?
Yeah, I believe so.
Try to rebrand. But yeah, I watched the first season. I don't think I saw the movie at the time. No one really saw that in theaters, huh?
I still have not seen the movie either.
Yeah, so
You're not.
not missing too
If
much.
you want to be a completist, go ahead.
But yeah, I missed out on the movie. And yeah, I just watched the first season. I was kind of entertained. I was watching on and off um, throughout kind of like high school. Just got busy. I didn't like fall in love with it like till God, maybe like towards the end when they started bringing in Maul and Savage Opress, and then I started really enjoying it because I guess just the first couple of seasons it just didn't click with me because it just didn't feel like there was a main character until the later seasons where they shift focus on Ahsoka. And yeah, I really appreciated it. It was cool to see the Netflix season and just all the mythology and stuff they brought to that world. So yeah, just slowly like started enjoying it more and more. And but yeah, I think I got more into it once I became a big fan of Rebels. So it's kind of my history of that. Love me some Star Wars Rebels.
Yeah, I did not watch the series like religiously at all. Like I caught a couple episodes, and I was like, I don't know about this. And then it was on Netflix. That's when it really got a second life. I think. It
Yeah,
obviously had a big fan base when it was airing, but like once it hit Netflix, that's when everyone was like, it was like a Breaking Bad level like second wave of
yeah.
fandom. I think people forget Breaking Bad was like a popular show when it aired, but then when
Mm-hmm.
it hit Netflix by season 3, that's when like it just blew up to this worldwide phenomenon.
Yes.
And Clone Wars did not have the Breaking Bad like heights of phenomenon, but on the internet it might as well have because like
Mm-hmm.
wow, it really blew up. And then I finally tuned in. Like I remember the first time I watched it, the very first Jar Jar episode, I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know about this. And then like the second time I watched it was like no problem. And some of the Jar Jar stuff I find very entertaining in that show, specifically an arc with Mace Windu towards the end of the original series run, I think, or season 6 or something like that. Uh, it's like if Mace Windu and Jar Jar Binks made a Lethal Weapon duo in space, and it's also like a crossover with Temple of Doom. It's fucking nuts, and it's great. Um, I ended up loving Clone Wars, and I had heard that it didn't really get good till later. And by the end of season 1, I was like, "What is everyone talking about? This is terrific." And I think it actually played a big part in my own reevaluation of the Star Wars prequels and really finally coming to grips with what they were about and allowing me to kind of recognize the flaws that are still there in those movies, but also not really caring about them because of what they had to say about like the nature of these like power structures, and that like the Jedi are not inherently a bad thing, but they basically lost the moment they went to war. And that is obviously driven home by the end of the Clone Wars cartoon as well,
Yeah.
where it's just literally like philosophical discussions between characters about like, yeah, no, this is like destroyed like our perception of society and like free will. And by the end, Ahsoka and Anakin can't even like reconnect because they're like, I got to go this way in the war, I got to go that way in the war, and it's terrific. I think it's safe to say we're all fans now, and I think we should talk about the final season, which at first I was convinced that it was going to be like 3 totally separate arcs, and it kind of was. Like the first one is kind of a standalone with the Bad Batch, the like hardcore clone troopers. Might as well be stormtroopers, but clone troopers, and they turn out to be a really lovable little squad. And I thought they were going to be like villains for the end. Like they're setting them up so then Rex and Ahsoka can face off against them at the end, and it would be tragic because you think they're like, oh, they're so obviously antagonists, but no, nothing like that happens, and that's okay because I like those characters a lot, and at some point we'll probably see them again, unless someone else knows something I don't, and they're actually dead in another part of the universe.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's too much Star Wars for me to keep up with. And then obviously we start following Ahsoka again, and her story in the middle of the season I find really fascinating because it's like, what does a Jedi do when they don't want to be a Jedi anymore? When they see that it's not working, like the way things are going are not working out for everyone, and I feel like there's still so much more that could have been explored during that time period, but we also don't really need to see more. Like we get what that like the purpose of exploring Ahsoka by herself in that time period. Like we get enough of that story. But I would have liked to have seen the return of oh shoot, what's her name? The former Sith villain who was like
Ventress, yes.
Asajj Ventress. That became a really great character. And I think it would have been really cool to see her, Maul, and Ahsoka kind of not even like face off again, just like kind of come together, because they've all been outcast from different aspects of the Force, the dark, the light, the in-between. They're all just forced to survive by the end.
Yeah.
And so that's a really fascinating, compelling story for me.
Also, when was the last time we saw Ventress? Like, it was really open-ended.
It was open-ended, and I'm to understand that once the Clone Wars was canceled after the Disney buyout, that's when they started closing stuff off in like comic books and like, okay, we'll pick up Maul and Rebels to close out a story. And while I like those separate aspects, I'm just gonna get this out of the way. That is my issue with Clone Wars, and it's kind of a nitpick because it's stuff you can't really control by this point.
Yeah.
Like I think Maul's a great character in Clone Wars. I wish his stuff was closed out in Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And I wish Ventress didn't get an ending in a book. I wish she got it in the show.
Oh, does she get an ending in a book?
I can shed some light on this. So, when the Clone Wars was canceled, it was canceled because Disney bought Lucasfilm, and Disney wanted like a clean slate per se. So even though the show was still canon, it was not a show that originated with the Disney brand. It originated with Cartoon Network, who is a competitor. So that's why I got axed. When the show was axed, there was at least 2 to 3 more seasons in development with way over 50 episodes planned. Now, when the show got axed and it got revived on Netflix, I don't know if you want to call it like a quasi revival per se, but There's a lot of information on the internet thanks to Dave Filoni, thanks to Pablo Hidalgo, thanks to all these people who were involved in the show, because these people literally did their best to give fans closure even before the Disney Plus revival.
Hmm.
And honestly, they went above and beyond, and I don't think a lot of people recognize that because they started a project, and I forgot what the name of the project was, but it was basically the umbrella that encompassed all of these other arcs that were going to be in the cartoon, but they couldn't because it was canceled. So
Mhm.
one of them was, of course, Son of Dathomir, which
Mhm.
was the Darth Maul comic book that was published by Dark Horse.
Mhm.
The second one was Dark Disciple, which is this novel that was basically gonna be in like a full-fledged arc in the cartoon by all means,
Mhm.
and it was gonna be the closure for Asajj, and that and you could buy it. I haven't read the book, but I have friends who have, and they say it's a really good novel. I don't know if I have the time to read the novel, but it's about Asajj having some kind of like, again, I could be totally wrong because I didn't read the book, but from what I've heard, it's a really good book, and it's about Asajj and this other Jedi, Quinlan Voss. He's in the show. Do you guys know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know who
He
you're
has
talking
kind of
about.
like I don't want to say dreads, but
No,
he has kind
he
of
has like I think he's clearly meant to be like a Native American looking. Like if that was
yes.
an actor, it would have been like a Native American actor.
Mhm.
He's also in the Phantom Menace, sitting in the background for like 3 seconds. But,
That's how like
yeah.
half these characters are introduced, and it
Yes.
doesn't even matter. It's so good.
No, yeah. So they have some kind of like love thing going on. Like they have some kind of like back and forth. And I don't want to spoil the book because I haven't read it, but I think she dies at the end. I
I will
think
say that I am aware of what you're talking about, and I won't spoil it either. But it sounds like it's a really good ending, and I would have
yes,
liked to have seen it in the show. And again, let me say that I understand it was completely out of everyone's hands by that point. So
yes,
it's a nitpick criticism. I just really would have liked to have seen it because this show, at its peak, is like quintessential Star Wars.
Yeah.
right.
That's
And,
all.
to answer some of your other questions, the Bad Batch were actually scheduled to make returns in other arcs. They were going to be like a reoccurring thing. I
Mhm.
don't know what their ending was going to be, like if they're going to die or if they're going to go off somewhere else. But they were going to be kind of like a reoccurring guest. They're going to have guest appearances in other episodes.
That would have been really great because I really like those characters. They're just hot headed enough to be like borderline
Mhm.
obnoxious. Like, dude, shut the fuck up. But also, like, I don't know. There's a really great dynamic there, and the fact that they're only in 4 episodes right before the end game, it it feels like the perfect missed opportunity. But again, I understand out of everyone's hands by this point. I am
Yeah.
glad to have known
It's
them.
mhm.
So I think
It's
that's
very
a win in and of itself.
yeah. It was unfortunate because yeah, I mean they're like the dirty dozen of clones. Awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
They're
And
just
the ending is really touching with them and
Yeah.
Echo,
mhm.
who have not seen since season 3. They brought back a character from season 3.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
good
Right.
lord. And of course, we all know where this is headed. We didn't know how it was going to play out, but the final 4 episodes with the Seas of Mandalore, which was like kind of this legendary discussed thing in the
Mhm.
fandom for a long time,
Yeah, because
plays
Dave
out and
Filoni kept
completely,
hyping it.
Yeah,
yeah,
he did.
and it totally delivers. Coincides with Revenge of the Sith. Like there are even certain music cues where I think they're lining up. Like
Yes, there is.
the ending of the episode where Maul is captured. I believe either that or this all kind of melts together for me because I just watched all of this. Either that episode or like the next episode in the beginning where it's like real quiet. You can almost feel the tension in the air. Like the show's basically just like teasing us that we
Yeah.
know it's coming and it knows
Mhm.
what it's about to drop. I
Yeah.
think the music in that scene is when Anakin and Padme are looking at each other from across
Mm,
Coruscant. They feel each other,
Mhm.
which just made me like almost cry, and I don't know why.
Yeah. They know it's
um,
gonna Order 66.
yeah, yeah, and I also want to give a big shout out to how cinematic this looked. Like the art direction is like better than ever,
yeah.
Mhm.
and like
Yes.
the lighting and like the use of shadows and I guess now full spoilers, but like Order 66 happens and we don't see it, but we hear Anakin turning to the dark side, and like it's peak Star Wars, I think, not just because it's what it's building to and what we know in the canon, but also like it's visual storytelling. Like, like Star Wars is sometimes very obvious with this visual storytelling, but that's okay because it's fantasy. And like the literal flagship of the Republic is going down in flames. In case you missed what the Star Wars prequels were about,
Symbolism.
there you go. There's your symbolism. But it's like it's the shit, and I was just like, if I saw this on a big screen, I would have been so happy.
Yeah.
But this was an incredible run of final episodes, and I want to hear what you guys think too.
Yeah, I was loving it. That you see, because going back to what you see, you were saying about Maul. He's an outsider. Just seeing how kind of like it's like this like hidden chapter almost in episode 3, where you're seeing perspectives of all these characters that are just literally caught in the middle, like the end of towards the end of Revenge of the Sith. It's just Palpatine like consolidating power on everyone. He killed off Dooku. He really doesn't care for Grievous, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't care about anybody,
Yeah. And yeah, it's just him and Vader, and you see you see Ahsoka's perspective. You don't see Dooku, but you see Maul and everything, and just this is just such a like world-changing event for the Star Wars universe, and just the gravitas of Order 66 and how the Republic became the Empire. It adds almost more death and pathos to Revenge of the Sith, which is good. Which is a good movie. No one.
It's a good movie.
Got to stick out.
I will go to bat for every prequel now. I honest to God would.
I'll tear off my shirt to fight those nerds that make fun of it.
Like, you guys haven't even heard my Attack of the Clones hot takes yet.
Is it like and they're shoving them in a locker? It's like, leave them alone.
Yeah, hey, pick on someone your own size. Also, you know what? Just sidebar. Just show respect. Those are like the works of an independent filmmaker. Those are the biggest independent films ever made. Yeah. They're distributed by Fox, but Lucasfilm was an independent film division until the Disney buyout.
Right.
That's incredible. So just respect,
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, sorry. Continue. Right. Andrew.
Well, everyone can agree that we're more than anything, they were very, very fulfilling. The fact that we've known that this was going to happen for a long time, it's talked about in Rebels, they've talked about it so many times in panels, etc. The fact that we actually finally saw it again is like a huge like privilege. The fact that this all finally got to happen, I really don't think, like, especially for a television show, because they get axed all the time. Some shows are very privileged to get the chance of revival. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, for example, being one of the most recent examples. Yeah. The fact that we finally got to see this and that it felt like a movie, I can walk away. I can go to sleep satisfied. I won't have nightmares. I won't be tossing and turning, because I'm gonna be honest with you. I feel like a pampered nerd. like they did everything for me. It was good. There wasn't anything like problematic about it. Unlike the other ending that we got last year, but it kind of really revitalized. Like, I kid you not, watching the Siege of Mandalore, because more recently I've been kind of like, I'm pretty sure you guys can you can feel this as well, that there's like saturation with a lot of, like, whether it's Marvel, Star Wars, whatever it may be. We have so much of this stuff, and sometimes it's not always as good as it should be, or it just feels really like, I don't want to sound like a film geek or something, but sometimes it kind of feels like factory manufactured. That you don't, like, they're not really all that special sometimes.
Yeah.
I've been kind of feeling a little bit of that, but watching this season, watching the final 4 episodes, I was like, oh, okay, this is why I love the Star Wars. This is why I binge watched this entire show for days, because I was reminded this is what I came back to my roots, I guess, if you want to say, like, now Star Wars is I can feel it again.
Yeah. Back to those Disney show. roots.
No.
No. Honestly, I completely get what Andrew's talking about. Like
Yeah.
that little feeling it in the air kind of thing. Like I think for a lot of reasons, not even like in terms of quality, I'll say. I think people just got Star Wars out for a minute because
Yeah.
Star Wars, more than any other franchise, is an event film franchise. And you kind of can't pump them out every couple months and expect them
Yes.
to be a huge hit.
Darn Bob
And
Iger.
you can't expect the quality to be there. I don't think even. And that's okay because one, making anything is extremely fucking difficult, and two, Star Wars is not. This is going to be a hot take, I guess. I don't think Star Wars is meant to last forever. I think it's a stepping stone for other storytellers to start going about their own path. I think Star Wars always has a place for people. There will always be a place for people in Star Wars, like the heart of Star Wars. I'm not talking about the stuff that I was just complaining about, that it's going to be like coming forever, right? I think the good of Star Wars will always outweigh the bad. But when you feel that in the air, like we were just talking about, there's going to be some stuff to overcome. And I think Clone Wars just helped them overcome that, because I haven't seen unanimous praise for something Star Wars like this since like Force Awakens.
Right.
And this is coming from a group of Last Jedi lovers, but
Right.
even though the loud minority was just loud, it's something that couldn't like fill the air the way Force Awakens did. But like, I guess the point I'm making is that the Clone Wars was a fantastic series and got a fantastic ending, and further proves that I think Star Wars needs to rest for a while. Because one, how do you even top this? Not that you should always have to try to top something when you make something new. Art is art, it's an expression of self or something. But like, yeah, I don't think Star Wars is meant to last forever. I think Star Wars is meant to be there for people, like almost like a spectacle manifesto in a weird way, like something for people to enjoy and get something out of. It has to be like very like emotionally fulfilling and thought provoking, and should always be far more left leaning than right leaning. I think that's very important. George Lucas is notoriously very critical about politicians and corporations. So is the Clone Wars. So God bless Dave Filoni for keeping that in line. And I don't think it could inherently continue to be those things if we're going to get a Star Wars show every 6 months, a Star Wars movie every 6 months.
Yeah.
I think it will eat its own tail for a little while. And then it'll come back down the line. But for right now, let's leave it here for a little bit.
Yeah, like even what you said, I don't think this is a hot take. Some people might, but there wasn't even this much unanimous praise for The Mandalorian.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of people who really like that show, but from my perspective, I've seen both sides very prominent. I haven't just seen one prominent. It was amazing. I've seen a lot of criticism and a lot of love. Unlike for this one, there has been some criticism for this final season of Clone Wars, and I want to get into it, but despite that, as a whole, and especially this finale, it's very much loved.
Yeah.
Gene and I specifically were like kind of grinding through that season of Mandalorian, and then by the end we're like, no, there was some good stuff in there. But I will say, as entertaining as that show was at times, it's not as idea driven as the Clone Wars is. Clone Wars completely understands, I think, what the prequels were trying to discuss, like philosophically or ethically, about the actual war. And Mandalorian, I think, at its worst days, got a little too, isn't it so fucking awesome that this dude's just shooting up dudes left and right? Aren't these big battles awesome?
I was gonna say it kind of reminds me of a fan film sometimes.
A little bit, and there's some bad shit there, but a little bit. And I love, man, like I will definitely be there for season 2. But there's just shots in Clone Wars in this final season where it's like, oh, we won, and then they look around, there's like just devastated civilians, some people like cowering in fear, and it's just like, oh, that's right. War does not make one great, as Yoda would say.
Yeah.
And that's very important to remember with this series. And I think that's what they need to keep remembering. If your big Star Wars movie ends in a big battle, it can be exciting, it could be fulfilling, but you need to remember it can't just be spectacle. It needs to be about something. It needs to say something. And Clone Wars said a lot in this final season. That was actually a little hard considering the state of the world, I guess we'll say.
Right.
Yeah.
But anything else we want to dive into? I'm gonna read off a couple responses from our Twitter account for people's favorite arcs or episodes, and then favorite characters. I'd like to toss it to you guys. Favorite
All right.
characters
In the Clone Wars?
in the Clone Wars, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, okay, before we do that, me and Gene, and we got to settle some beef here.
Oh, do it.
All right.
Do it while
Okay,
I
do
do
it.
the tweets.
We're gonna
And
fight.
you know what? And I'm trying to, obviously this is funny because we're hypothetically fighting, but this is actually, I'm pretty sure it might come up later because this has been one of the more controversial topics with the final season. And you even said it earlier, Diego, the middle arc. And no, like, I'm not here to, like, I'm not gonna throw sand in Gene's eyes, but a lot of there's been a lot of talk that the middle arc is quote unquote trash. It's not good. It's boring. Blah 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 blah. Now, don't get me. Gene's like laughing through this. Don't get me wrong. I don't think the arc is like perfect or what you say, and we cannot ignore the fact that a lot, or I don't want to say a lot, but there's a fraction of this conversation that is dominated by the usual Kathleen Kennedy is putting women in my Star Wars product.
Right.
Look at this woman. This woman has a buzz cut. What the fuck, Kathleen Kennedy?
Okay,
what do you?
I guess I've missed this, thankfully, while avoiding. I actually, thankfully, also shout out to everyone who I'm following for not spamming my Twitter with spoilers. Thank you very much for that. But yeah, I haven't seen a lot of this discourse, so please, by all means, continue.
There has been, because of course, and it didn't hit me until probably today when I was thinking about what was I going to say today. But the three arcs, when you look at them individually, they're very much, and we've already talked about it, how who's the main character of the show. There kind of is no main character, but for the finale, Dave Filoni and his team were given, you only have 12 episodes. The last one is obviously going to be Mandalore. Now, the other two, they were chosen for specific reasons. One of the main reasons was because a lot of the pre-animation was already finished. A lot of the scripts, they've already been in the works for a long time. These three arcs, they've been in the works forever. It's not like Filoni went back to the drawing board and he decided, oh, I need to come up with new stories. No, like, all of this stuff was already in place. The Bad Batch and the Ahsoka arc. The Ahsoka arc specifically, crazy enough, if you go on the internet, you can see visualization of this episode, and it is almost frame for frame the same thing that we got. Literally. And of course, today Filoni, he's being smart because he's saving a lot of money. He's saving a lot of headaches. But I think we need to talk about the people who got the most hate were the Martez sisters because, you know, they're two girls. Originally, believe it or not, there were no sisters in this arc. Ahsoka was always going to fall into level 1313 after leaving the Jedi. She was always going to go into some kind of business with Spice, but it wasn't going to be with the sisters. Originally, it was an Asian character who you could see that they have. You can go there. You can go on the internet. This is all there. And the previs has him in it, and his name was Nix Okami, and he kind of has the Okami dog on his jacket, like from the video game Okami, like that wolf.
It's a great game, by the way. Everyone who hasn't played it, check it out.
And Filoni has said that he wanted to put an Asian male character, and him and Ahsoka they're gonna have some kind of romance. They're gonna go back and forth, and they're gonna go on these adventures. But for the final season, Filoni was like, "No, we're gonna make." 17? Well, she has like a romance with that character Lux, but
they're like young kids is the thing, right?
Oh, okay, okay.
I mean, they're
the same age. He's not like an adult.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, this guy was young. He was a young kid too.
Okay.
Nix Okami is a young kid, and for the final season, Filoni changed it to the sisters. Now, And the sisters are actually voiced by really good actresses. One is Elizabeth Rodriguez. I can't remember the name of the second one. Please forgive me.
Sorry.
Diego insert it like as like a bot and be like,
I will not. I'll look it up right now while you keep talking.
okay, uh, so good on him for putting representation. But
Yeah.
when you look at the season and three pieces, the first season with the Bad Batch is very kind of like male-driven machismo. Like there's no women in it. Like I'm not
Mhm.
Yeah.
criticizing that. I'm not
It's all
I'm not
dudes.
I'm not saying put women in it. I'm just saying it's all kind of male-driven. In the third episode is all female-driven, and then
Right.
in the third they collide.
Mm-hmm.
And the first season being Rex because they're all gonna be males because they're all clones. No shit. It's gonna be Rex, and the second one is Ahsoka, and then the third one is kind of like Maul esque. Maul is kind of introducing the last of Ahsoka. So in the end, you kind of get a trifecta of Rex, Ahsoka, and Maul,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
they're kind of like the three biggest chess pieces that needed some kind of like resolution or clarity.
Yeah.
Even before, like if there was going to be a final season, those three are definitely the most important. Now I know there's fans who, and again, Filoni has shown previs at Star Wars Celebration. There was going to be an arc of Boba Fett in resolution with Cad Bane, the bounty hunter.
Yeah. Cad Bane
Mhm.
Yeah,
disappeared.
and in that arc, you okay? This is gonna sound stupid, okay? In that arc, and I love it. I don't think it's stupid, but it's gonna sound corny. It's in the previs that you can see on. You can find it on YouTube.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it before. All of the
You
Boba
we
Fett.
find out how Boba Fett got that dent on his helmet. Do you know that
Mm-hmm.
one dent
Yeah.
that's
No, because I don't give a fuck. But that's funny.
no?
Diego has bad eyes. You can't
Look up
see this.
No, I just don't care about Boba Fett.
He has cataracts.
yeah, Google Boba Fett, and you'll see that like on the right upper half
Mhm.
of his helmet, he has a dent. And in this arc of Clone Wars that they were gonna plan, we were gonna find out. We were gonna get resolution for Boba. Don't get me wrong, but we were also gonna find out how he got the dent. Now, if you're Dave Filoni and you have all these arcs in front of you, and they only chose you to choose three, you are not gonna choose the they explain why Boba Fett has a dent in his helmet. You're gonna
Mhm.
choose the one about Ahsoka and showing why what she learns before meeting Anakin for the last time. You want to put her in the fish out of water situation, not the
Mhm.
one about Kid Boba Fett. Even though I would have loved to seen that, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
There's people out here who are like, "Oh, SJW, they're only putting women, forcing me, like they're like the
Yeah.
assault makes no sense. Like, what is this? Like, why are there three women at the same time? Like, there can't be that. There needs to be a guy in there. Like, no, all of this was previously planned. It's just
Mhm.
that they finally got the money to finalize it, and that's one of the reasons why the animation looks so goddamn beautiful.
Yeah, it looks really
Oh.
season. And Trace Martez was voiced by Bridget Cali Canales.
Yeah, there it is. There.
Yeah,
Mhm.
she's yeah. And Elizabeth
They were
Rodriguez,
good.
I didn't know it was that Elizabeth Rodriguez from Miami Vice, Orange Is the New Black. Really talented actress.
Yes, and they do phenomenal voice acting. They do
Yeah,
great work.
they were great in their roles.
Yeah,
But we
and
don't get
I really liked that arc too.
perfect. I mean, I like it. It's not perfect. It serves a very important role for
Mhm.
Ahsoka. And again, even Jean said it. She's kind of like the main character of this show. So
Yeah.
of course that has to be in it, and it leads into Siege of Mandalore very smoothly. Even though I thought it was probably a little bit too abrupt because they just kind of.
Mhm.
But I kind of have the idea that like the Martez sisters might be in comic books, novels. They might be
Right.
the animated show even. You know what I mean? Because that's so important to see. Like because especially the very last shots of season 7, even though they're like I'm gonna sound like a nerd, they're freaking like epic. Like the final closing shots, you
Mhm.
have a sense of okay, is Ahsoka just gonna walk into like nowhere and just like chill until she meets the characters in Rebels. Like, no, she's probably gonna go spend time with the sisters, go do some other bullshit, and then we'll get that in comics or another show eventually, and then she ends up in Rebels or something. You needed that kind of like idea because if not, then we're gonna go on Twitter and we're gonna make tweets and we're gonna say, Filoni, why why did that? And we're probably gonna drive him insane like Pablo Hidalgo.
Poor,
Yeah.
poor Pablo. Poor.
I
I
actually
saw.
thought
He's doing well. I've heard.
Okay, good. I mean, he probably doesn't need to be on Twitter. He's better than us, is the thing.
Yeah.
But I initially thought the closing of the series would have been like a Star Wars movie where it's like it's cutting back to like Obi-Wan, Yoda, Ahsoka, and like they all feel each other in the Force or something like that, and they just know that they're okay. And no, you don't even get that optimism. Like this ending is just like beating you down from optimism. It's like if you don't know the Star Wars movies, like if you're a kid watching this, right? And like your mom or dad or someone is like, "No, you got to watch this before you watch Revenge of the Sith." And then you
Yeah.
watch Revenge of the Sith and then this ending and you don't know the other movies, your kid's going to have like emotional problems for a little while because there's no hope. I mean, we know it because of the saga, but there's no goodness to this ending. It's just like, yeah, no, the Republic is broken. Ahsoka and Rex are gonna go struggle to survive in the outer rims of the galaxy. Anakin is now Darth Vader, and he picks up the lightsaber that Ahsoka dropped, signifying the life that she has to leave behind. And he is looking at it one last time as a life he can never get back. And that is from my good friend at Jacob Knight on Twitter. Gene and I know him as Noah in real life, but he made that observation right before we started recording this, and I was like, "Holy fuck, that's really, really profound."
Yeah, I love that last
wow.
shot. It was so meaningful. Poor sad Anakin.
Filoni literally turned Clone Wars into Blade Runner for like a few minutes, and he was like, "You know what? Just fuck it. Like, I have the money. It's gonna have like heavy synth. It's gonna feel so like deserted. There's gonna be all these Blade Runner parallels. Just do it. Fuck it." And then, you know what? I'm pretty satisfied.
I'm very satisfied too, and I would say this last couple episodes with that heavy synth score and like the rising like electric like I was like, fuck, they're like going here, like it's really teeing us up.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some favorite arcs and favorite characters. At Anton Reyes Cool said the 5-episode Geonosis arc is legit great, an underrated gem, and anything with Boba, to be honest. I don't get the Boba Fett. I'm sorry, I still don't understand.
Wow.
Everyone else likes him.
You're a Boba Fett hater.
I kind of am. Like my favorite Boba Fett thing is when he gets knocked into the Sarlacc pit on accident by Han Solo. So, whatever.
Yeah.
Favorite arcs
of like the entire show.
Yeah. What do you got?
I was really enjoying Darth Maul's when he tries to I forgot the name of the arc, but the coup on Palpatine, where Savage Opress gets killed and he takes over Mandalore.
Oh yeah,
that was like some epic stuff. And is that when Sam Witwer starts voicing Palpatine as well in that season? Because I don't know if anyone knew the voice of Palpatine for a bit was
Ian.
No, it was Ian McDiarmid, and then it was Tim Curry for a season.
No, it was actually a separate voice actor who passed away after the first 5 seasons, and his last episode was that one when he faces off against Savage and Darth Maul on Mandalore.
Right.
So no, but his name is also Ian, isn't it?
Really?
Is that not his name?
Abercrombie, you're right.
Yeah. The two Ians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fantastic voice actor.
But Tim Curry voiced him for a bit, right?
Yeah, he's season 6.
Yeah.
For the first revival.
Yeah. But yeah, I love that arc. I love all the Boba when Boba ends up with the bounty hunters, because I mean that was one of my favorite characters, and just how they were examining just the difference between Boba and the other clones, and
Simon Pegg, Dengar.
Yeah, that's Simon
Pegg.
When I heard that Simon Pegg was in Force Awakens, I really hoped he would be Dengar again. Not what's his name, Plumback or whatever the fuck that guy.
Plunkar.
Plunkar, yeah.
Unkar Plutt, excuse me.
Unkar Plutt. Because I think like Simon Pegg was like perfect as Dengar. Want to see more about it. Yeah. But yeah, just I love all the bounty hunters. I love everything with Cad Bane. That episode with Chewbacca and Ahsoka.
That's
with Predators.
Fun.
The one where
Yeah.
it's literally predators.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
so
exactly.
much fun. That's
With
a really good one.
Bosk.
That's
With
literally
Bosk.
predators. That episode, that arc is predators, or like
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
Yeah,
episode.
but that's awesome. Like,
yeah.
I'm not
And I
complaining, but
yeah.
and I love the episode where they just did Seven Samurai too.
No,
That was
you
great.
know
Whenever
what?
they
That
homage
was
stuff.
the biggest disappointment for me because I have such high hopes for a story with that structure that it's
Yeah,
just kind of like, yeah, we just threw this together for one episode. It's not even a multi-part arc. It's just this one episode.
yeah.
So to me, that's the worst episode because of the potential
hmm
lost there. That's
Well,
that's if
well,
I
I
got to be
enjoyed it.
harsh.
And
No, it's
Mortis.
fine, but you know.
Yeah, Mortis is the last one of my favorite arcs.
Oh
all
yeah,
right.
yeah. Lots of love for Mortis in the responses, and just in general, that's also one of my favorite arcs, if not my favorite arc of the series until this final
hmm
season.
Yeah.
Um, it gets close to rewriting a little too much for me, but it just totally nails it with like understanding like the light and the dark and the balance between the two. And I think there's this really interesting unspoken history with Star Wars in that everyone always says like, oh, I want to see like a gray Jedi, and like that's like nothing. It's like saying like I want to see a human being that is both good and bad, and it's like, well, that's just a human being. Like
hmm
that's you a Jedi can be capable of both. Like Sith is the one that chooses to be like to explore the dark all the time, but like understanding of the Force is obviously just understanding of all its aspects.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
that's what it is. There's Gray Jedi is a dumb name for me. And but anyways, Mortis I think taps into something really interesting there.
Yeah.
Let's see other responses. Um, from at Devin M626,
Hopefully,
Darkness on Umbara. At Devin M626, Darkness on Umbara. I don't know if you guys remember that one.
Um,
that sounds very familiar.
Okay, so Darkness on Umbara is it's Apocalypse Now. There you go, with the General Jedi who is the same race as the boy, Obi-Wan's boy. What's his name? Fucking Dexter Jetster. The Jedi play
Oh,
the same race.
yo, that
Yeah,
arc is insane. That arc
yeah.
is insane. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess for people that are listening to this that haven't seen Clone Wars, just some backstory is that a General Jedi convinces the clones to keep going on suicide missions because he sees them as like disposable, the same way like one of the Separatist commanders would view the droids as disposable, not as like people, and they end up having to like cause like a mini revolt against him because he's like a psychopath, and
Yeah.
that's where the show really starts blurring the lines between like, oh, maybe the war is just bad. Maybe there is no right side. Maybe just this whole thing is bad for us.
hmm Yeah.
That's a really good one.
Separatists were kind of evil, but they made some good points here and there.
Well, no, the separatists are the capitalists.
Oh.
The republic is the greedy politicians that want to stay in power.
Right. Sounds very familiar.
Yeah, I don't know. Huh, that's super weird. It's almost like George Lucas created this fantasy series for kids to inform them about corrupt
About
politics
about
in America.
neoliberalism.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and then of course the Siege of Mandalore, which is like that's just like the arc now for the show. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Andrew.
So heading back a little bit, the Mortis arc, I remember watching that and I was very much digging it. But the moment that Qui-Gon Jinn came back and it was Liam Neeson, I almost did like a backflip. I was like, what? I don't know. I have very heavy nostalgia to the Phantom Menace, even though it's
Mhm.
not a good movie. But
No,
it's like
it is. But go on.
it's a guilty pleasure. Like I love watching the Phantom Menace for all of its faults and all of its greatness. But seeing Liam Neeson again, I couldn't been more happier. But besides that, two things. The first one, the Youngling arc, I feel like is essential and can never go. I feel like that arc itself has become almost timeless within the fandom, at least, because
Mm-hmm.
seeing Yoda take like a group of little kids and they're all different aliens. One's a Wookiee. They're all like different things, and literally throwing them on the ice planet Ilum and going, "All right, go inside this like frozen ice tomb, and if you don't make it out in a few hours, you're gonna get stuck in there forever. All right, go." And then they all go in, and they kind of face like uh, their inner demons, searching for their kyber crystals. And David Tennant is kind of he's this robot. I don't know what you want to say, chauffeur.
Oh yeah, that's kind of what he is.
Yeah.
And he helps them actually build their sabers, and that stuff right there I think is pretty essential. It's a beautiful arc. You finally get to see a piece of lore that was never previously unexplored, and it's just so cool to see all these little kids who are so very hopeful, but they're all going to die soon. But you see
Oh
all these,
my god, that's right.
they're also very, I think I find it to be very beautiful. Not that they're going to die, but their journey, just finding who they are, their spirituality, seeing the Wookiee make a lightsaber that's out of like bamboo, that looks out of wood, that's the shit I'm in for. Like, give me more of that. Like, that's the kind of like extended lore stuff that is not really corny, but it's like believable enough where I could see it fitting in this universe.
Mhm.
Also, this is the hot take. This is the controversial one because I remember when this came out and people on the internet were mad over stupid reasons. But the arc, I'm not sure what season it's in, but the arc where Jar Jar, because believe it or not, Dave Filoni made Jar Jar really funny. I always like Jar Jar. I'm pro Jar Jar. This is a pro Jar Jar account. Okay. I
Mhm.
believe that he wasn't written the best, obviously in the prequels, because George, he was probably in over his head. But when you write that character to be entertaining, he can be entertaining, in my honest opinion.
Yes.
He is not a bad character per se inherently. You can do good things with him, and
Yeah.
the day that he comes back in live action in one way or another, I will do a backflip. I don't know how else to describe it, but the arc where he has to impersonate the Gungan leader who um who kind of looks like him, and he kind of has to do deals with
Mhm.
the Separatists and General Grievous. That arc is really entertaining and it's really funny. It's kind of like really, it's kind of like sitcom bullshit that like works in space, where it's like, why are you dressed that way, Jar Jar? It's like, well, Misa the leader. Like, no, it's not. It's like really stupid, but it's so good. It's like so funny in the best way. And I remember, tragically enough, General Grievous ends up killing Captain Tarpals, which is the purple Gungan in the Phantom Menace with the
Mhm.
mustache. Okay, dog. Like, look, I know the Phantom Menace isn't good. I have nostalgia, but when Grievous kills him, I felt something. I don't know what to say
Mhm.
because he was the homie. He was like an OG. He was a part
Yeah.
of the event, and when he dies, and Grievous tells him, "It's like, oh, I killed you," and he says something like, "No sacrifice." Like, it's a very noble death. And I remember being so touched by these Gungans. And I know Gungans are very much a hot topic within Star Wars themselves.
Like
But
Ewoks.
yeah, exactly. But the fact that I felt something in those moments, I that's a real testament to the show. But I remember when the show came out, and if you guys remember, the Gungans all beat Grievous because they throw the blue balls at him and he kind of shuts down. I remember
Yeah.
when now, like, there was threads and comments. This is so stupid. How can Gungans defeat General Grievous? He has like 4 arms and they're Gungans and
Yes.
they.
For. No. Yeah. It's,
Filoni, Filoni. They can't win. This doesn't make any sense. I'm stupid. Like, I'm very much glad that we've surpassed an era. In my honest opinion, that thinks that's not much criticism. In my honest opinion, but I'm very much glad that we're
yeah.
beyond that. And
It's just
if
I
you
don't
were to
like it. Yeah.
yeah, it's literally I don't like it. You're stupid. Give me something that I like, even though they're not realizing that a lot of this content works for a lot of people, like
Mhm.
me. And the fact that I got to feel something over this duck lizard who just sacrificed his life,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, man. Like, I want more of that shit, and the show did continue to give me more. So I think the Padawan arc with the younglings,
Mhm.
because A, they're gonna die soon, and B, because it's beautiful, and that Jar Jar arc of him impersonating the leader, that's like peak. That's peak Filoni. Filoni's a madman. And I know, Diego, you're gonna about to say you love that arc about the little toad who goes on the missions with the droids. That's peak Filoni. Like, Filoni,
Yeah.
we make these jokes like he's a madman, but we
Mhm.
don't know what kind of energy he has harnessing under his cowboy hat. This man literally said, "Fuck it, I'm gonna get 4 episodes of like a animated show budget, and I'm gonna make it about this fucking frog." And that's like, he
Good
I don't know, he's
storyteller.
insane. Yeah.
I remember when that was coming out, I would keep up with like IGN reviews and stuff like that, and like that was not a beloved like series
No.
of episodes at all. And then I saw it, and I was just like, oh my god, like it's this almost like John Carpenter minimalist like action adventure story with these dumb little droids and a frog who feels inadequate because no one takes him seriously because he's a frog, and then they save and rescue and re-inspire a trooper who joins them and sacrifices for them so they can continue on their mission because what they're doing is good and true, and it's so good. It's like that's what Star Wars is about. You know, you're bringing up the Gungans, which I also like that arc a lot, and I think people gotta remember that Star Wars is also for kids,
Yeah.
and for families to enjoy together. It's not like I think the problem with that recent movie that we don't really
Not
need to
talk
get
about
into
that
beyond
movie.
this, but like
Not talk
I
about it.
think the big point of contention is that a lot of it was for the older fans and not for people who are new to this. And it's like, well, then why are we even here? You know?
Right.
Yeah.
And Clone Wars, through it all, brought back Jar Jar multiple times to much fandom chagrin.
Hell yeah.
To cute little shit. I know there was even like an idea for like a bounty hunter Ewok at one point that would have been kind of like for like an Asajj Ventress arc or something like that unfortunately got nixed. I would have loved to have seen that because I also like Ewoks a lot.
That sounds like cinema. I don't know about you, but
Yeah,
Bounty
no.
Hunter Ewoks.
No, they give me
that.
episode 9. I'm putting that little Ewok at the end of Return of the Jedi in the Millennium Falcon alongside Kylo and Jar Jar. That's my pitch.
JJ,
That's
JJ
what I would
doesn't
have
like
done.
Ewoks.
But anyways, I digress. I just want to say that yeah, it's for kids and for families to enjoy at the end of the day. And yes, the arc with Mace Windu and Jar Jar Binks is the most delightful 2.5 hours like ever. It's not the best episodes ever, but it is just so fun for me to just put on. I could tune in completely or just have it on in the background, and I'm having the time of my life doing it. But yeah, the final episodes are probably just like they probably just are the best by this point. Like,
you know what?
There's no topping that.
Yeah, I'll say this: people hate Jar Jar. So many of these people on the internet per se who they type away at their keyboard saying that Jar Jar is stupid. He's the worst character. They're just mad because Jar Jar, factually, this is not an opinion. This is fact. Gets more coochie than them.
I'd believe. Oh, you know what?
He does.
He hooks up with that space princess in that episode.
Princess, royalty, my boy, royalty.
The virgin nerds versus the Chad Jar Jar Binks.
He's a prince in my book. I don't know about you guys.
Hell yeah. Jar Jar not being in episode 9 is an actual war crime, and I will be putting a message forward to the UN.
Yeah, friggin' that author that shouldn't be named because he blocked you. Jar Jar. What does he know? The dick.
Well,
cool thing. Like, what an asshole.
Well,
we're not gonna name drop him.
Be a liberal asshole.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, we're not gonna name drop him.
No. Tag him. I was being respectful with my slander, but whatever.
It rhymes.
Just made a joke. It rhymes. No. It's fine. Anyways, favorite characters. I think. I'm just gonna take a wild guess here and assume we all have the same favorite character, and her name is Ahsoka Tano.
Yeah, I like Ahsoka. Yeah.
For the Clone Wars, I mean. Like,
yeah.
We go with like my favorite character.
Yeah, of the series.
I think I would go with Maul.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
I really like him a lot in this too. He again. What hinders him from being like the number one for me is that Ahsoka, just her growth from being like, I guess she's a fine character to, oh my God, I think I would die for this fictional character. Like the same way I would like die for like Rose Tico or Luke Skywalker, you know? Like that level of fandom for me. But yeah. Maul's good too.
Yeah. I love Maul, don't get me wrong. And like I kind of disagree with you guys on that, like, or you at least, Diego, that his arc should have ended in Clone Wars over because I'm kind of biased because, in my opinion, more Maul, the better, unless it's like something really stupid and forced in like in a movie for some dumb reason, maybe Solo. But going off what you're saying, Diego, I remember when the animated movie came out, everyone hated Ahsoka. They thought she was a little brat. Now, don't get me wrong. There was a lot of people who liked her from the beginning. I'm not trying to deny that from anybody, but there was a massive hate for her because she was annoying, quote unquote. She was bratty, quote unquote, and that there wasn't. It makes no sense because where is she in the movies? Blah 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 blah. There was all of that kind of like stupid, negative, like hollow criticism, and the same. Like she wasn't like my favorite off the bat, but if you watch that show, you literally go like on a journey with her from like
Mm-hmm.
she's okay. You know what? I actually like her a little bit more. Yeah, she's terrible to like yeah, like you know what? This is the ride or die. And I don't think
Yeah.
a lot of other like animated shows or like shows in general have because in the first two seasons you can't really say she's the main character, but she kind of literally takes over in a good way. Like she rightfully takes the lead, and I don't think you could say that for a lot of characters in Star Wars.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
maybe I don't know. She stands out for a lot of reasons, and I think part of it was that the show was just finding its voice, and then obviously it finds it in Ahsoka once it remembers kind of or like figures out how to approach the same themes as the prequels, but with kind of a more swashbuckly attitude from the original trilogy. Because this one, thankfully, what I always loved about it once I finally got into it was that it didn't have a specific point of view, that it was about the Clone Wars. That was the main
Yeah.
character. That was the through line. Was that we're seeing these different aspects of the universe, and like you get these one-off arcs about like, oh, they're trapped on this planet and they have to work with like the general populace. Like that comes up a couple times, right?
Yes.
And it's always like, oh, like okay, they banded together and they defeated the separatists, or oh no, they betrayed them and they got to run away from the separatists. But either way, the statement is still like solidified that like war has reached a place that it hasn't before.
Right.
And we as the audience understand that while today was a victory or a loss, the loss is going to be much bigger in the future once the empire comes to be, because all these places that have now been discovered will now be under the empire's like reign of terror. And to me, that was like always a very scary thought. And then we don't even see the extent of it technically in any of these stories, but we understand the weight of it. And I think that's a testament to like a really great story that is basically it's EU nonsense almost, in lesser hands. Yeah. This is like, oh yeah, this is the story that they didn't show you in the movies. It's like, oh, you want me to buy an expanded comic? Like that's what you want my money. But no, it's just a really good series that more than delivers on its ideas, its characters, and tragic heartbreak that make it very hard. And I'm gonna cry myself to sleep tonight.
Yeah, George, he's talked about it before when like they were first creating the show, that he wanted to make something episodic. Like he wanted to go back to serial based television programming that inspired him when he was younger. And I think that's one of the main reasons why the show did not air in chronological order, because George was mad enough. No, I'm gonna do an episodic Star Wars series. And I don't know if this is another hot take, but I think John Favreau was kind of inspired by that with Mandalorian, but I don't think the Mandalorian, also granted it's only one season, but I don't think the Mandalorian's first season is as strong as per se like maybe the Clone Wars' first season, because even though yes they're both episodic and that a lot of the same formula or basic skeleton is repeated constantly, but again, like what Diego said, there's a theme and it always sticks to that theme. You can tell what the show is about. It's literally about the war. I don't really know what the Mandalorian is besides it being about this guy who's really cool. So even though
it's trying to say something about like the trauma he went through, or just kind of he's always been war torn. But yeah, it doesn't really communicate that well, because it's just cool. Like, isn't this cool or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just fan filmy.
And I guess like to say that
I was gonna say it attracts like the wrong type of Star Wars fan. We're like, oh, aren't you glad it doesn't have any politics or anything? Like, it has nothing to say.
Yeah, and I think it does, to its credit. I think it does have things to say. You're right, Gene. It just does not get to deliver them as well as I think it could or should.
Yeah.
And I think we take for granted that this is literally like the last thing George was working on before he sold the company. You
Oh
know,
Yeah.
God.
and I
Yeah,
think that
I think that really solidifies my feelings on it too.
yeah, and like we talk a lot of smack about the last movie that came out, and we're kind of we're not talking smack, but we're criticizing the Mandalorian, and to an extent, I don't think it's a coincidence that they John Favreau and JJ they're both kind of two people who, even though I'm not gonna say which one, I think one is a better filmmaker than the other personally, but they're very much very heavily inspired by George, and they kind of almost kind of they take that inspiration probably a little bit too heavily sometimes. So I
Mhm.
think this, if anything, this final season of Clone Wars, even though George is not directly involved, he started this baby. He's one of the main reasons why it survived for so long. His ethos, his ideology. I think you could see that a lot. That like maybe the reasons why these other things aren't so good is because they're trying too hard to be what only George could do, maybe, or that he could do so good. Like they don't take enough of their own liberties.
I think you're absolutely right, Andrew. And on that note, we got to wrap up right now. But I don't think there's a better point to end on. Just Star Wars, I still stand by my point that it's not meant to last forever. At least this version of it. I think it is finally time to let this all go. And I think I haven't revisited Rise of Skywalker as of this recording yet. I intend to
Yeah.
soon. I'm rewatching
It's
The
on
Last
Disney
Jedi
Plus.
first.
Yeah.
It's finally on Disney Plus because we're recording, of course, on May the 4th. And this will be up on May the 4th. So you're welcome, everyone.
Hmm?
But I think whether or not the filmmakers intended The Rise of Skywalker also is kind of saying that there's only so many ways to tell a story within
Right.
this era of the saga. It's time to move on, for better or worse. And I think, honestly, for the better, for the foreseeable future. Andrew, thank you so much for coming to join us
Mhm.
on this
Thank
Clone
you,
Wars
Andrew.
talk. I couldn't have asked for a better guest on here. Where can the people find you?
They can find me on Twitter at AndrewJ626, as in Lilo and Stitch, of course. And by all means, if you want to keep this conversation going, I have been posting weekly reviews of the Clone Wars on Discussing Film, and we're always constantly talking Star Wars. I'm constantly talking Star Wars on my feed, even though it does get tiresome. I try to avoid it sometimes, but if you ever want to engage in anything, I will by all means engage with you, as long as you don't try to shove me in a locker.
No,
Or
you're good. You're
yeah,
good. No 7 locks for
yeah.
you. Gene, where can the people find you?
Find me on Twitter and Instagram, G9892.
Thank you so much for joining me, both of you. And of course, you can find me at the Diego Crespo on Twitter. Check out the rest of the Waffle Press on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Patreon, where we're going to be posting a lot more stuff. Let's talk about movies coming in hot this year. We have a Patreon tier that allows you to suggest a movie for us to talk about. And we're going to be doing a lot of that because guess who has all the free time in the world now? Everyone, but also
Yep.
us. But
Yes.
thank you guys again. Couldn't be happier to talk cloners with you guys. Thank you, George Lucas, Dave Filoni, everyone who worked in the series. We've been professionally unprofessional, and may the force be with you.